Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating, deeply personal slice of the internet. We're looking at a piece of documentation from a very dedicated hobbyist named Ang. It's titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 344. I mean, just think about that number for a second, 344. That level of dedication, it means we're tapping into a massive gold mine of accumulated knowledge and, plenty of trial and error along the way. In this specific entry, Ang tackles a highly specific question about a particular family of fish, and in doing so, they hit on this universal dilemma that pretty much every pet owner has faced at least once. It's honestly this brilliant little micro-study on how our whole approach to a hobby can evolve over time. Let's get right into it.
So I want you to think about this fundamental question for a second. Are beginner-friendly pets actually a myth? I mean, we've all been there, right? You stroll into a pet store, you see a tank slapped with a huge Great for Beginners sticker, and you just assume it's going to be a total walk in the park. You figure this animal is, well, practically indestructible. But as we're going to see from Ang's incredibly meticulous notes, that label, it can be a massive trap. It sets us up for failure. And honestly, worse than that, it can create a totally miserable environment for the poor animal. This exact question is the central conflict of the source material we're exploring today, and it completely frames the author's modern perspective on the entire hobby.
Okay, let's dive into this. The main subject of Ang's recent documentation is this stunning little nanofish known as the Black Emperor Tetra, or if we want to get scientific, nematobrycon-palmeri var black. Now, from what Ang has gathered, this is not just your run-of-the-mill Emperor Tetra that you'd find casually swimming around in a wild river. No, this is a selectively bred black variety. It's literally a marvel of human cultivation within the fish-keeping world. It takes the familiar silhouette and behavior of the Emperor Tetra and just completely wraps it in this striking, deep, dark aesthetic. When you see it, it's super easy to understand why a dedicated fish keeper writing their 324th journal entry would be so drawn to documenting a species with such a unique, curated pedigree. But what's truly mind-blowing is the biological quirk Ang points out for telling the males and females apart. I mean, sure, body shape plays a role like it does with a lot of fish, but look at this incredible detail. It's literally all in the eyes. Male Black Emperor Tetras flash these brilliant metallic blue eyes, while the females observe their world through metallic green eyes. Wow. It is just such a peculiar, absolutely beautiful detail. Imagine, just for a second, looking into a perfectly balanced aquarium and being able to identify the whole dynamic of the school just by watching flashes of metallic blue and green catch the light. It's exactly these tiny, hyper-specific observations that make fish keeping such an endlessly rewarding and captivating thing to do. But to really understand how Ang feels about bringing these beautiful tetras into their current setup, we actually have to take a quick look backward at a bit of a cautionary tale. Ang reflects on rediscovering fish keeping, quote, many moons ago, and exploring a totally different, incredibly famous species, the neon-tetras. And right here is where we confront that beginner myth we talked about earlier. Ang directly calls out the super popular claim that the neon-tetra is a beginner-friendly ornamental fish. And honestly, we've all heard it, right? They're small, they're super cheap, they're brightly colored, and so they get sold to practically everyone buying their very first aquarium. So, how exactly did that quote-unquote beginner-friendly experience go for Ang, a person who is clearly a passionate and highly observant hobbyist? Well, disastrous. That is the exact word used in the text, disastrous. Despite all the popular claims floating around about how easy they are, the author's early limited experience led to a completely disastrous outcome. It is a really stark one-word reality check. And honestly, it's a pretty brave admission for someone who writes literally hundreds of posts about fish keeping to make. It just completely shatters the illusion that just because a fish is small and popular, it's automatically easy to keep alive. But right after dropping that heavy admission about this past disaster, Ang slips in this very gentle parenthetical aside. Not that we're any better these days. It's just a fantastic little bit of self-deprecation. It really humanizes the whole journey of being a hobbyist. Look, we all make mistakes, we all have massive learning curves, and even after 324 meticulously documented entries, there's still this really humbling recognition that, hey, nature is incredibly complex, and we definitely don't always have it perfectly figured out. It's a great, gentle reminder not to take ourselves too seriously, even when we're striving for absolute perfection in the things we love doing. So the really crucial point here is, why exactly was it disastrous? What was the huge disconnect between that beginner label on the tank and actual reality? Well, the text lays out the real, highly uncompromising environmental demands of these little fish. They don't just need water, they require serious extra care. Specifically, they absolutely demand fully cycled and completely established water. The biological filtration has to be robust, stable, and incredibly mature. You can't just fill up a glass box straight from the tap, drop a neon-tetra in, and expect the poor thing to thrive. No way. They are intensely sensitive to even minor water chemistry fluctuations. That whole beginner myth? It totally ignores the highly technical ecosystem management you actually need to keep these tiny ornamental fish alive and happy.
Which brings us right to the title of Eng's post, and honestly, the big pivot point of our explainer today. Knowing the incredibly strict requirements of tetras, and then looking at that super alluring, selectively bred Black Emperor Tetra, should we explore Tetra these days? It's the ultimate question, isn't it? Do we try again? Do we take all the hard lessons learned from those disastrous neon-tetra days, apply our accumulated knowledge, and bring these stunning metallic-eyed beauties into our homes? Eng poses this exact question directly to themselves, and by extension, right to us.
And this brilliantly illustrates how a hobbyist's core philosophy evolves over time. To answer that big question, Eng contrasts their past with their present. In the past, dealing with fish that required meticulously cycled and perfectly established water meant relying heavily on traditional setups. You know the drill. You needed mechanical and biological filters constantly churning away. You needed artificial LED lighting to manage the whole environment inside a house. It was a lot of tech. But contrast that with Eng's current practice. They now strongly favor a totally natural outdoor environment with a super minimal setup. We're talking absolutely no filters, zero artificial LED lighting. It's an approach that completely strips away all the technology and relies entirely on natural sunlight and outdoor environmental balance. It's just a completely different, almost radical philosophy of fish keeping. So when we actually sit down and weigh the demanding, ultra-sensitive nature of the tetra, a fish that, as we know, demands highly controlled, perfectly cycled, established water, against this modern philosophy of minimal, filterless, natural outdoor setups, the verdict is a very simple, very resolute, not really. Eng concludes that no, they shouldn't explore tetras these days. And it's not because the fish isn't beautiful. I mean, we just spent minutes marveling at those amazing metallic eyes. But it's all about compatibility. The highly demanding nature of the tetra just simply no longer fits into that minimalist, natural picture Eng has worked so hard to curate. It is such a fantastic example of knowing your boundaries as a hobbyist and genuinely respecting the actual needs of the animal over your own aesthetic desires. Which leaves us with this final, really overarching thought. Eng's entire journey, from that disastrous, highly technical indoor setup all the way to a successful, beautifully minimalist outdoor environment, it really forces us to ask a big question. Is true fish keeping actually about mastering all the complex technology required to artificially sustain ultra-sensitive fish like the tetra? Or is it really about stripping all of that away, returning to nature and learning to work with the environment rather than constantly fighting against it? Looking closely at Eng's notes, they definitely offer a seriously compelling argument for the latter.